Thursday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day. Hope you all are having a great day out there today. If you are in Minnesota, you might get knocked down by the wind today. I did not expect that when I walked my kids to the bus stop this morning. They have an early bus right around 7, so I'm doing this after that. A lot of times it's before that, but today it's after that. It's windy. Almost got knocked over. It's coldish. It's going to get worse. We know that, but this is the first real blast of, okay, yeah, it's certainly not summer, and it is not the mild October that we experienced as well. So everybody stay warm. Putting on my dad voice. Put your hat on. Stay warm. Bundle up. Be safe, and we'll get through the Thursday in decent shape. Great show to get you through. Velle E, Neal III, Star Tribune columnist, joins me here in just a little bit. Daily Delivery debate segment with Velle. Some juicy subjects this week. Who is winning the Karl-Anthony Towns, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, Timberwolves Knicks blockbuster so far? Velle and I have slightly different opinions of that. We'll get into that. Should the Twins consider at least exploring a Carlos Correa trade this offseason? Velle and I definitely disagree about that approach. So we'll get into that. And we'll get into Bears versus Vikings. Of course, Velle, long-suffering Bears fan. He has some thoughts about the Bears. He will be in Chicago with our Vikings team, Star Tribune reporting team, on Sunday for that game. For more on that, I'll talk about it in a minute. I got some thoughts on that game in a minute, but we also recorded an Access Vikings podcast yesterday, so go check that out as well. Andrew Kramer, Ben Gessling, and I setting up that game, talking about a bunch of other stuff as well. Some Gopher basketball, good recruiting news at the end of the show. Gopher volleyball, a tough one, but a hard-fought match at the end of the show as well. First, though, what did I miss? Like I said, I got some Vikings thoughts. I was out at the facility in Eagan yesterday to record the Access Vikings podcast, but also to kind of be part of the Access periods. I went to listen to Kevin O'Connell talk, and kind of the big subject right now that's on my mind, and certainly Kevin O'Connell got asked about this a lot yesterday, is Sam Darnold and just kind of where he sits right now. 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Advanced numbers are pretty good. Pro Football Focus has him graded as the 12th best quarterback in the league right now. ESPN's total QBR metric, not quite as favorable. He's 19th right now. He was kind of more like the mid-teens for a while, but I think the Jacksonville game really tanked his numbers there and put him down on that list. But, if we average out 12th and 19th, we're basically talking about a guy who's right in the middle of the pack, 15th, 16th. You would have taken that. You would have said, sign me up at the start of the year. You just said, sign me up for Sam Darnold being a league average quarterback, one of the 15th best quarterback in the league. Sign me up for that. If he's going to give the Vikings that, you would have said they've got a chance to be decent. Well, they are more than decent. They are 8-2. And so what I've noticed now is expectations, we're getting greedy. The way we talk about the Vikings, the way we talk about Sam Darnold has changed. Understandably so, right? When someone shows you something more than you thought they were going to give you, and that goes for both Sam Darnold and the Vikings, and their fortunes are certainly intertwined, suddenly you then want more. I don't know if it's fair, but we are definitely judging the Vikings and Sam Darnold differently than we did at the start of the season when it was like, oh, wow, Sam Darnold made a couple good plays. That was cool. He's not... Maybe this isn't quite the Sam Darnold that got pushed out of New York, that didn't quite have the comeback he wanted in Carolina, that went to San Francisco and kind of had that year to reset. So then you have to start asking, okay, well, what is different about him? You clearly see it in the numbers. He's completing like 68% of his passes. He's been more like a 61% guy throughout his career, if that. He's never been this accurate. The interceptions are still a concern, but he's making a lot of big-time throws. He's making a lot of good decisions. So what is different? How have we come to expect more from Sam Darnold and, by extension, more from the Vikings? Kevin O'Connell likes to talk a lot. Just in general, I could stop there, and I don't think you would disagree, but he likes to talk a lot about Sam Darnold, quarterbacks, and the marriage of the eyes and the feet. And he's explained this, and to me, it just means you want your footwork to match where you're looking, right? You want your 7-step drop, your 5-step drop, whatever it is. You want to be ready to throw, looking where you're throwing, square to where you're throwing at the time when the receiver should be coming open, when you think the route is going to be where it is, things like that. You want to match up as best you can your timing so that when it's time to throw, you are square, you are ready to throw that ball, and it is going to be more accurate that way. You are going to, be ready to throw it more quickly. Those split seconds matter. 2.5 seconds versus 2.8 seconds, that matters when it comes to rushing the quarterback. The difference between a strip sack and a touchdown. I think we saw that in the Tennessee game, that first touchdown to Jordan Addison. There was a blitz off the corner. Another 0.2 of a second, Darnold gets crunched. That ball is floating up in the air or rolling around on the ground, but instead he gets it out just in time. Jordan Addison gets it, runs it in for a touchdown. So those split seconds matter. So it's the marriage of the eyes and the feet, making sure that you're seeing where your eyes are looking, scanning, and that your feet are matching where you're looking and you're scanning so that when you go to throw the ball, it's going to be accurate. But Kevin O'Connell, he was basically asked, how is Sam Darnold getting coached differently here than maybe he has been other places? Without so much saying what was going on other places because he didn't know. He gave a good kind of explanation of how they coach quarterbacks in Minnesota. So I want to run that back right now.
I can't really speak to, any other situations. I feel very strongly about the way we coach the position here, and it's definitely a we thing. It's not just me. It's Josh and Grant in the room. It's Wes. It's our whole staff, and then I think it's the Sam dynamic of hopefully feeling like it is a back and forth thing where we're always going to coach him hard. There's been some moments where we've come in on Mondays and maybe I coach some things up a little harder, based upon being the razor thin margin of error for the quarterback position. That's what it is, and it's when you go back and look at times that it doesn't work out. You better have been coaching principles to try to avoid some of those things ahead of time. So then you're just circling back to, hey, all this was this was a feet and eyes thing, or you've taken this rep 15,000 times since you've been here, but why on this one was this footwork a little off, or why are your eyes in this place instead of right here? And normally when you peel all those layers apart and do it in an organic way that has a little bit of a positive reinforcement of belief of the player, you see a guy play at a good level and a high level. And what we're trying to get with Sam is just get him to play the best football of his career based upon the principles that we believe exist in this offense, and stay as consistent as possible regardless of the result, good or bad. We go back to work and we coach, and that's a back and forth thing that I think is important with NFL quarterbacks, that they feel that ownership of the position personally because they're given the opportunity to do so.
How common is the feet and eye thing? You've mentioned that up quite a bit. Is that a common coaching technique? It seems like it would be. I'm
sure. I hope it is. I hope it is for just the greater good of the health of the quarterback position. But it is. Maybe there's a belief in other things, and those may work too. I just know that. Coaching the position as authentically and consistent as you possibly can is something that I believe very, very much to my core in doing so, because there's just so many variables in it that if you're, I just don't want to ever be literally the Monday morning quarterback where you're holding the clicker saying you should have done this, this, and this. If the player's never heard that before, that's my fault. That's not any quarterback's fault. And
now again, we're only 2 games removed from the worst Darnold game of the season. Through those 3 interceptions in the red zone. I think 2 of them at least were in the red zone. All 3 of them in Jacksonville territory. The Vikings had to eke that one out 12-7. They still won. I don't care how they win. I don't think they care how they win, but the style points don't matter. Nobody comes back and adds up all the points at the end, but it does kind of give you a sense of your overall strength. How you win sometimes does give you a glimpse into how you might fare going forward. But we're only 2 games removed from that. Much better last week. That was certainly one of his best games of the year, both in terms of Pro Football Focus grades, the eye test. He was making tons of plays, spinning out of trouble, making plays with his feet, delivering the ball accurately, hitting those big-time throws, things like that. So that just says it's not going to be perfect, right? Like, you don't know yet exactly what you are getting from Sam Darnold week in and week out, but more often than not, it's probably going to be that better version of Sam Darnold. What does this mean for the future? Well, it probably means that Sam Darnold is going to get paid next year, and it probably means that he's going to get paid by somebody else. I don't think this is going to be like a break-the-bank kind of contract, but if somebody needs a competent starter who's still, we're not talking about a 35-year-old here. We're talking about a 27-year-old right now, somebody who could be, somebody who could be your starter for at least a year or 2 and maybe more, kind of that Baker Mayfield mold, kind of what Baker Mayfield did last year to rehabilitate his career. And, of course, he got the deal with the same team, with Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay hadn't drafted a quarterback like the Vikings have. They've got J.J. McCarthy ready and willing to take over once he's healthy, once he has another year under his belt. So you don't think it's going to be here, but Sam Darnold, for spending this year here, for spending this year as a starter, as long as these last 7 games go reasonably well, they get into the playoffs, maybe make some noise in the playoffs. Hey, beyond that, who knows? If they win the Super Bowl somehow, you probably have to figure out a different plan. But just in general, if this goes how it probably will go, where they're a wild card, going to be hard to catch Detroit. Detroit is so good. If they're a wild card, maybe get in, maybe win a playoff game, maybe even 2. I don't know. But just the usual, the normal kind of trajectory of what we would expect for this season. Sam Darnold's going to get paid somewhere else. He will be eternally grateful for this season. The Vikings will be eternally grateful for what he has given them. Bigger picture, this bodes very well for J.J. McCarthy, because I think Kevin O'Connell and the rest of the Vikings offensive staff, the people in the quarterback room, Grant Udinski, Wes Phillips, the offensive coordinator, guys like that, they are getting a reputation around the league for their work with quarterbacks. They are getting to be seen as a place that is good for quarterback development. And so I feel like that tells you that J.J. McCarthy should be in a good position to succeed next season, as long as these guys are around still, as long as they don't get, some other big promotion, things like that. So I think this bodes well. This bodes well for the present. This bodes well for the future for the Vikings. Just think it's interesting. Expectations certainly have changed, rightfully so, for Sam Darnold and the Vikings this season. It's daily delivery debate time. Michael Rand here, Velle E. Neal III with me as usual for this. It's Bears Vikings week, Velle. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first off, how are you?
I'm doing swell. How are things with you?
I'm pretty good. Don't love that there was snow flurries. Had to dig out the kids' snow pants this morning. I guess we still have winter gear that kind of fits. But
that time of year.
It is that time of year. It's the time of year where lots of things are happening. So I want to start with number one for our debate. Who, to this point, would you say is winning the Timberwolves, Knicks, Karl-Anthony Towns, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo trade?
I'm going to say that both teams are losing the trade. All right?
Okay.
They're both losing.
Okay.
I don't think either team has gotten what they've wanted out of this in terms of what their final products are going to be. They both are 8-6. I think both fan bases expected a little bit more. Cat's performing well. He's averaging 26 points and 12 rebounds. I think he's hitting 51% of his 3-pointers. He is playing well, but it has not translated into victories for the Knicks. I do not think that the Wolves and their fans have seen the best version of Julius Randle yet. He's not scoring at his normal clip. His rebounds are down, and he's turning over the ball a little bit too much for a big man. Maybe in a month from now we'll be able to get some separation here. But right now, both teams are 8-6, man. I don't see a winner. I see a couple teams that are still trying to figure things out 14 games into the season with their new pieces.
I don't think either team should be surprised at what they've gotten so far. Towns has been a great offensive player, but I think it was a story in The Ringer recently about how awful he's been defensively. And if you're asking Towns to be your primary five, which he didn't have to be here the last couple of years, remember, he shifted more to power forward, let Rudy Gobert be that kind of rim protector, ball chasing, kind of cleaning up all the messes. When you're asking Towns to be your rim protector, it's not going to be pretty. And his defense has been atrocious this year. Part of the reason they're 8-6. Julius Randle, they're having to adjust to his style. I think maybe the kind of weird minus is I want to like Dante DiVincenzo, and I like him. He's just not playing as well as I thought he would so far. He's not making shots at the clip that he did last year. I think he's a good fit. He just hasn't had his best 14 games so far.
No, definitely not. And I think he teased us, I believe, in a couple of those preseason games. He came in stroking from three pretty easy. Made it look simple. You're like, oh man, they really have this is a 2-for-1 that's going to work out for the Wolves. But it's not transpired since the regular season has begun. So I think a lot of us expect Dante to pick it up from the perimeter as he gets more comfortable here. But I don't know, how many games should it take for a player to get comfortable in a new environment, in a new city, in a new system? We're finding out now. Both teams, the Knicks and the Wolves, are finding out.
Yeah, I think you're right, too, in that if you had to say both teams are losing, I still think the Wolves got the better of the deal, and I think that'll prove itself out over time. I just think fit-wise, we're seeing what some of the problems were, right? Like we said, if we trade Towns to the Knicks, suddenly he's a 5 again, at least until some of their other guys are healthy. No Robinson. They don't have any other real bigs that are healthy right now, so some of that's getting exposed. With the Wolves, you got Randall, who's not a great defensive player, not like Cat was, but he at least knew the system here. Randall's learning that system. I think Gobert's been a little bit not as dominant as he was last year when he won Defensive Player of the Year. It hasn't necessarily helped both teams. I'm going to say for now, the Wolves are winning the trade, even if that's faint praise.
My concern with Randall's defense is that I don't know if he just can move his feet fast enough to he doesn't look agile on defense, and that troubles me. But I appreciate this podcast because now you're giving me a column idea for next week.
There you go. That's what I do. I'm a gift that keeps giving, and they've got some big games coming up. They had a nice little break here, maybe to get some practice time too. They just hadn't had a lot of practice time this year, but they played Sunday. Don't play again until Thursday, so they probably had some time to actually get some stuff drilled up. I would expect that Chris Finch will draw up some stuff defensively and offensively that maybe gets them into a better place when they play again on Thursday. Lavelle, second question. Should the Twins, now I know full well he has clauses in his contract that would suggest this isn't going to happen, but should the Twins be exploring a Carlos Correa trade this offseason?
That came out a few weeks ago because Joel Sherman, who's a longtime baseball writer, columnist out of New York, approached Derek Falvey at the GM meetings and asked him about it. And of course, Falvey didn't help matters by saying, we always listen if someone has an idea they want to explore. So they got all the people dreaming, scheming about possible trades and how it would look. I still think this roster is good enough to compete and win the AL Central Division. Injuries have been an issue for the last 2 years. With Buxton, we've gotten used to it, unfortunately. With Correa, he was generally healthy with the Astros. So him having plantar fasciitis issues in each of the last 2 years is kind of hard for us to it's kind of hard to absorb that because we didn't see that coming from him. But when he's healthy, he's an excellent defensive shortstop, and he's reliable at the plate. If he goes to the Mets or the Yankees, he probably would have to play third base. I don't think that's the best position for him. While he has the arm to play third, he does not have the offense of a prototypical third baseman. He was going to play third when the Mets were exploring signing him a few years ago before they got scared by the medicals. So you'd have to go through all that again. what would the contract look? Would Carlos demand a contract extension / renegotiation as a condition of him waiving his no trade? I think there's a lot of hurdles here. And I think the Twins are better off holding on to Carlos Correa, crossing their fingers that there's going to be a healthier season in 2025, and trying to find some pieces to fill out the roster to make it even stronger. But I just think you look at the talent that the Twins have, you would seriously be taking it down a notch by moving Correa, and that's not worth it because this roster can win. I know what last year looked like the last 39 games. This roster can win.
I'm concerned more. Correa, when he's healthy, fantastic player, right? Like he was showing that for 3-4 months last year before plantar fasciitis caught up to him again. Like he is, when healthy, he's generally their best all-around player. No doubt about that. And he's being paid as such. My problem is he was signed here when payroll projections were much different. They had the payroll up around $160 million. You imagined that maybe that would be kind of the baseline, or they'd kind of keep growing with whatever the pace is, inflation, stuff like that, keep bumping it up by $5 million a year. Instead, they slashed it by $30 million, $35 million last year. Hey, that's basically Carlos Correa's salary, by the way. And it's not going to go up this year. Like everybody on their roster right now, you count the arbitration guys, you count all the guys they have on the roster, you kind of get to 130 pretty fast. Like, how is this team going to get better? So you look at it and you say, subtract that money. Yeah, you've got to subtract that player, but it gets a lot more. You get a lot more flexibility if you're able to do that. I don't want to see him go. I just don't know how he fits into their current payroll scheme.
Yeah, it's difficult to justify a roster when one player is making 20% of the payroll. And when you combine Buxton with Correa, those two guys are really eating up a chunk of the salary. And you could also toss Pablo Lopez.
Pablo next year too, yeah.
But I would keep Pablo, no doubt. I mean, he was mentioned too. The Twins was having enough trouble trying to round out a starting rotation this past season to let their best starting pitcher go. So I hear what you're saying from a payroll structure standpoint, may be a little dangerous. You would like to think that maybe the Poets just may say, screw it, we'll just push it to 140. But I don't think they're going to do that while they're exploring a sell of the team. So basically, I guess we're saying the Twins are screwed. Basically, that's where we're headed with this.
Well, I mean, you're saying they can compete. I don't know. I mean, obviously, they were in a position last year until the last 6 weeks that they looked like they were going to win the AL Central again. I don't know. It depends on which version of this team you think is the real version. Do you think it was the team that played so well for 4 months after that bad start and before that bad finish? Or do you think that was more of the mirage, or at least it's closer to a 500 team than a competitive team? I kind of tend towards the latter, but if they're healthy, and we've seen a lot of teams that kind of fall into that category, if they're healthy, have succeeded lately, they can compete, but they're kind of fragile right now, I think.
Yeah, they are. But before those last 39 games, they were handling the injury to Joe Ryan and Chris Paddock very well, even though they had to get really young at the end of the year, and they were like using Zebby Matthews and David Festa for 3 or 4 innings for them out there. I thought Rocco did as well as he could, juggling their rotation and trying to get the most that he could out of the youngsters. But it seemed like there was just everything just kind of fell apart because they lacked depth. They couldn't absorb many more blows from a health standpoint, and it all just came crashing down. And I just can't see that duplicating itself a second consecutive year. So how do you keep as many of these guys as you can while being mindful of the payroll and having a round out a roster? I don't know, but I don't want to trade Carlos. I just don't.
Yeah, it's all moot if he doesn't want to go. I guess maybe the final question to this before we move to their last subject is, if you're Carlos Correa, are you interested in potentially going somewhere else? Are you looking at this and saying, it's going to get worse before it gets better? I don't know if I want to go through whatever version of rebuilding on the fly this is, or kind of trying to compete still. Do you think he would be interested in it versus just the Twins potentially exploring it if the phone rang?
If he could go to a situation where it's a better chance for him to win, I bet you he would consider it. And I think the Mets and Yankees are in that position more than the Twins are right now. Although, once again, I still think, it's irrelevant. Twins competing in the division versus actually making a run at a World Series title are two different things. the Mets and Yankees are in a better spot in that regard. So
yes,
I think he would consider that if it was presented to him.
Vikings versus Bears on Sunday. I saw something emailed to me earlier this week showing the odds of the next coach fired. Your guy Eberflus was at the top of the list at 2-3 odds, even higher than Doug Peterson, who should have been fired like a month ago. What do you think happens in this game? Are the Vikings going to get another coach fired, just like they got Robert Saleh fired earlier this year?
Could be. The Bears have never fired a coach in the middle of the season.
Right.
And the McCaskey family has stuck to that throughout their ownership period of the Bears. So, of course, fans are demanding that the McCaskies change that policy for Eberflus. But the thing that I don't think is getting talked up enough as this game's approaching is that the Vikings lead the NFL in run defense. They're only allowing about 75 yards a game. And the Bears, when the Bears offenses look the most functional, it's because they're getting a balance with DeAndre Swift and the running game and some timely passes from Caleb Williams. Okay. All right. Even though there was an improvement last week against the game against the Packers, a game that the Bears should have won, despite a horrible non-call because there was leverage when they blocked the field goal on the long snapper, which has not been talked about enough either. But I think even though the offense looked better in that game, it was still scored 19 points. It was still 19. In the NFL, you got to score 25 to 30 points a game to have a shot, and the Bears haven't done that. So I'm expecting the Vikings to go into Soldier Field on Sunday and march out with a victory, and perhaps maybe like the fuse that gets Eberflus fired out of the cannon into Lake Michigan, never to be seen again.
It's got to be frustrating, right? Because I thought the Bears were going to be good this year. Like, I looked at all their offensive weapons and I said, man, like, this is a team. I mean, this is back when I didn't think much of the NFC North. Like, I didn't think this was going to be the greatest division in football. You thought the Lions were good. I thought the Packers might regress a little bit. I thought the Vikings were a 7-win team. I was like, there's room for the Bears to win 9 or 10 games this year if this clicks, if Caleb Williams is everything they hoped he would be. It's just not coming together. They probably need to start over from a leadership standpoint. I mean, they were 4-2 at one point this season. They played better last week. That was kind of a heartbreaker. I mean, they've had some heartbreakers. You get the field goal blocked. You have the Hail Mary against Washington. I mean, they're not far away from being a 6-4 team, but it's just
right.
Something's not clicking. The leadership there, whatever it is, like making those winning plays just doesn't seem to be happening right now.
Well, here's a damning stat against Matt Eberflus. Since the beginning of last year, the Bears have lost 4 games in which they had a win probability of at least 90% in the fourth quarter.
Oh no!
That points to game management and leadership and Eberflus. And so I've never been a big fire the coach or manager guy, but his game management skills have wrecked this team and it stopped it from winning some games. And I think it needs to be addressed. I thought they had a chance to maybe getting to 9 or 10 wins as well at the beginning of the season. I was worried though. Caleb Williams was not in a good situation as JJ McCarthy was here in Minnesota, because Caleb's got to play right away. He's playing in a town that's had horse bleep quarterback history. He's playing in a town where the fans are so desperate for a winner. All that's going to be on his shoulders. He's also playing for a team that has a crummy offensive line. All those factors were working against Caleb Williams. JJ didn't have to come in and be the man right away. He could sit and watch behind Darnold. Maybe he would have been playing a couple weeks ago after one of Darnold's interception fest. And he's got bookend tackles. And he's got Justin Jefferson. And he's got Aaron Jones. So I always thought JJ was in a better spot than Caleb, because it was not the keys to the car were not in his hands yet. With Caleb, it has been. And we've seen as a rookie, growing pains. There have been some flashes of excitement, a reason to be excited. There's also been moments where he can't get the play called, can't get the protection figured out, and can't pick up the blitz. So it's all the growing pains for Caleb Williams have been seen here this year. And you add that to Eberflus's game management, and you have a team that's lost 4 consecutive games.
Devil's advocate here, though, Lavelle, before we go. I mean, Jaden Daniels has been the guy. He's doing fine in Washington, and I don't know if his support is that much better than Caleb Williams. Drake May has done pretty well since he took over in New England. Bo Nix seems to be ascending right now. Like, it is possible. I don't think Caleb Williams is having a terrible year. He's definitely had his moments, but when you have that expectation as the first overall pick and it's not all clicking, then the question starts. So it's sometimes a rookie quarterback can succeed. I agree. McCarthy's in a much better position, right? Like, even though he got hurt, go through this whole thing, get yourself a year to just sit and watch, develop, get yourself right health-wise, and then go in and play next year. But it is possible for Caleb Williams to do more than he's been doing.
Yeah, it is possible. And too, when you see them draft Roma Duze and trade for Keenan Allen, you're like, look at those wide receivers. Cole Kmet's a steady tight end. You saw DeAndre Swift getting into the mix. You see the weapons in place there, and you're like, man, a quarterback can thrive there. Rookie quarterback, that may be another story. And we're seeing that with Caleb Williams. I think he's going to be a pretty good quarterback. Hopefully he'll be the best of the four we just talked about. I think Jaden Daniels is in the lead right now with Bo Nix second and May third. But sometimes you need 4 or 5 years to look back at a draft and make an assessment of who ended up drafting the right quarterback. So we just have to wait and see.
Where will you be watching Sunday's game? Privacy of your couch, somewhere else? What's the game plan?
I'll be watching from the press box at Soldier Field, my boy.
There you go. That's right.
I'm covering the game with Ben Gessling in Chicago this weekend.
Back to Chicago. This is your second trip to Illinois in like the last month because you had the college trip too. This is a good run for you.
It is. I can't complain. So I'm looking forward to be back in the Windy City, and hopefully I see a good football game. I was there. I covered the Vikings Bears a couple years ago when the Houston Texans won on the last week of the season. The Vikings just wanted to get through a game without getting anybody injured, and the Bears wanted to get the first overall pick in the draft, and it all came together nicely. So maybe something will come together nicely for the Vikings on Sunday as well.
We shall see. Lavelle, appreciate it as always. We'll talk again next week.
All right, take care.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Great stuff from Lavelle. Postscript on our conversation about Carlos Correa. Interesting thing about Correa's contract. The biggest year, just in terms of sheer money in the contract, is 2025. It jumps up to counting over a little over $37 million on their payroll. The last 3 years of the contract, it goes down by about $4 or $5 million. So interesting the way it's structured. It's not like a massive difference, but that next year will be the most expensive year of Carlos Correa, and then the subsequent 3 final years after that, unless, of course, he has that vesting option if he hits certain plate appearance incentives. Those go down 26, 27, 28. So I don't know if that helps the Twins in their thinking, whether they want to try to move him or whether they want to try to keep him, things like that. But the point stands that when they signed Carlos Correa, their payroll was in a different place than it is now. Do they need to think about how that looks, how that's different now, how the TV situation is different, how everything has changed about how they're building things, and frankly, how they have a lot of middle infielders. Brooks Lee, Royce Lewis. They've got a lot of guys who can play the middle infield. Royce Lewis can be a shortstop. Brooks Lee can be a shortstop. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not trying to push Carlos Correa out the door when he's healthy. He is a fantastic player. He is absolutely a valuable member of this team, essential to the playoff success they had in 2023, was essential to them building that division lead last season that all fell apart. So I think you've got to look at it and say, you know what? What's the most practical solution to this? How does this shake out for the long term? When might be, if at all, the opportunity to move Carlos Correa and that contract? Let's finish quickly. A couple things in the cooler. Parker Jefferson, a 4-star recruit, according to at least some recruiting projections, chose the Gophers over USC. He is from California. Kind of just a late look from the Gophers at him. They didn't really put ramp up the intensity on recruiting him. Didn't even offer him until fairly recently. But that's a pretty big get for Ben Johnson's team. He's from Inglewood, 6'10" center. So some good news as they try to rebuild this roster, reload this program. I think this year's going to be a struggle. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They could be better than I think. A lot of times teams are better than I think, but a good get for Ben Johnson as they try to build towards the future. Gopher volleyball dismantled Wisconsin in one set last night, but it didn't last. They lost in 5 in Madison. The Gophers are ranked 16th, Badgers 6th, so a lot of good things to take away from that one for the Gophers, but they do end up with the loss in Madison, a hard-fought 5 sets, so see where that gets them going forward, but a pretty terrific match. Again, volleyball, one of the best sports at the U, both in terms of their success rate and in terms of just the watchability. It is tremendous, tremendous content to watch. That will do it for me today. Speaking of the Gophers, Bob Motzko, men's hockey coach from the Gophers, will join me on Friday's show to talk about that season and plenty of other stuff as well. So stick around for that on Friday. Until then, have a great rest of your Thursday. Back at it again tomorrow.